Sensationally silver, because you are.
Hi, I'm Robin Norwood, author of the international bestseller, Women Who Love Too Much. And I'm inviting you to join me in conversations with extraordinary, ordinary persons of age, people who demonstrate that sensationally silver is truly a state of mind. This mindset encompasses well-deserved pride in who and what we are today, rich in years and experience, in strength and hope and wisdom and fortitude and dignity. Come celebrate with us because we all are truly sensationally silver. Welcome, everybody, to Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind. My guest today is Susan Cooper, and she's going to surprise me as well as you because we have only met just a little tiny bit. I don't know a lot about Susan, but I know she's a very intriguing woman who does some amazing things. So she's going to tell us about that. Welcome, Susan.
Oh, it's my joy and honor to be here. Thank you so much. I'm a huge fan of yours. You've
Oh,
done so much to help women and men understand ourselves better. And I think that is the key of life. If we can understand ourselves, we can deal with those around us best.
yeah, and there is a huge challenge in understanding that opposite sex because we are not the same. Our brains aren't wired the same. We don't think the same. We don't act the same. So it's a challenge. We need all the help we can get with that one.
I'm with you. I have three sons and a husband. I'm really outnumbered in my home. And in my business, I'm a producer by trade. I've made large motion pictures. I produced The Vow with Channing Tatum and Rachel McAdams, and it made over $200 million for Sony Screen Gems. I've done a lot of documentaries. I've won many Emmys with my husband. And I'm in a man's world. That's my era. So I sort of speak to my era, but because of my sons, they keep me eternally youthful. Whether I go there kicking and screaming sometimes or crying, I'm so grateful to them. And I want to just say I was blessed to get to meet your daughter even briefly. What a magical soul. We are so lucky. The warmth off of her, I was saying, you and your work is so groundbreaking and significant for women. And what I can see with her is it's a balance of, we can all say intellectually to be kind. It looks like your daughter is kindness. Like that's what she is. Those of us like myself, I have to study it. I have to read your books. I have to do the exercises. Intellectually, I'll get it. But I have part of me is this kind of angry, young, fighter back kind of gal because of the era I was raised in. And so it takes her a little longer to trust, and she wants to get the information out. And I literally need the balance of both of you. I need the intellectual wisdom and heartfulness you have. And then I wish I could clone into me some of the cells of your daughter.
That's pretty high praise, Susan. I don't know where to go from there. Let me ask you a couple of the standard questions that we do with this thing. So, first of all, Susan, how old are you?
I'll be 67 in November.
Okay, and the minimum age for interviews on this Sensationally Silver, a state of mind dialogue here is 60 because we're talking about being a person of age and we're talking to people of age. And I understand through a mutual acquaintance, your sister and my dear friend, that you kind of got reinvented by your son. Is that true? And will you tell us about that? Because it was so intriguing when she just told me a little bit about it.
Yeah,
So
100%. So I was working with all men, making movies and documentaries, my husband and other men. And I was saying to myself, I'm just not happy in this environment. That's the environment. I would be at conference tables of literally these giant conference tables, very manly, right? The shape of what men like. There'd be me, maybe a couple other women for the most of my lifetime. And my kids were so great. I have three, and each one took a role in shaping me to the work I'm doing now. My oldest son is a professional soccer player who then developed an incredible program through TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and all the social media. And he now helps other men and women go pro. So he took his model, which was then his was developed by my middle son, Ari. So Ari Taubleib, Root Financial is my middle son. Zev Taubleib, Taublieb, is college soccer guy. Ari has a brilliant how to retire and how to handle your money best. So whether you're younger and wanting to build, or you are now older and planning to retire, he handles retirement in a whole new way where it's holistic. It's not just money, it's are you happy? And how do you achieve the lifestyle? So they have a lot of programs online. And they said, Mom, you're a natural coach. You've always loved helping people at any age do what you do. And I thought, oh, I can't make the same kind of money, and that can't be, and I need to work. And my oldest son actually spent 6 weeks, and we would stay up till 3 in the morning, and I would be crying and resisting because I was so frightened. I've been behind the camera all my life. So the idea of coming in front of the camera was terrifying, and everything about it felt wrong to me. I mean, I'm used to hair and makeup. I'm used to a slickness, this authenticity. It just felt, as a producer, because that's particularly what I do, wrong. And he's like, no, Mom, that raw you can be unleashed in this format. You finally fit somewhere. Because I am the girl. I just even had a call this morning with a wonderfully, hugely talented creative team I'm working with. And a lot of my direction was intense because I can see, the rustle in the grass coming, like, let's wake up to these things. And as a teacher, I find in a situation where I'm allowed to be that, I'm marvelous because I'm your auntie and I'm allowed to do this, right? I was just this ballsy and wavosy at 22. I'm no different. But finally, at this age, I can own the grandma space, the auntie space, even better than the mom space, because a lot of people reject mom. Grandma is a little different, or like a Hawaiian auntie. And then people let me in, and they kind of let me break through that crust. And I'll say, do you think of this? Or how about that? Or, so I do have, I am at Producer Gal or Susan Cooper Producer Gal in social media. And people find me who want to tell story, whether it's in social media, whether they want to do movies, whether they don't know what to do, but they have a story they want to tell. A lot of the movies I've done for television or film are based on true. The Vow was based on true. I did with Showtime an award-winning film about slavery called Fanny Kemble, Enslavement, the true story of Fanny Kemble, who is a marvelous woman in her 20s and came to the United States, kind of like Gone with the Wind, but this is true, married a slaver, didn't know he was, wrote a book, and in real life, they took her kids away. Her book was presented to Parliament, and England quit funding the South. Now, that's a simplistic of what she went through, but the power of one woman. I wanted to tell that story so badly because the parallel for me at the time was marriage and her experience of marriage and how she identified with the slaves. Now, clearly not anywhere near as bad, but this is one incredible cookie who still talks to me from the other side, because although it was a successful movie for Showtime, and it only got made because the lead actress was willing to do a nude scene, and she said, hey, I look marvelous, I'll do it. It was fabulous, and she's a very incredible actress, Jane Seymour. And in the end, she didn't do a full nude scene, but she had such guts. She did 51 costume changes in the heat in Toronto as the South. She's a magnificent woman, actor, artist. I have to say that very few women rise to that kind of level of success. And the ones I've met, it's particularly at Jane's age, there is absolutely, when you meet her and you see how she resonates, her work ethic, she's so close to her kids. Everything about her was different from most actresses of her time. So the Jane Fondas, the Jane Seymours, the Janes that rose up, there's no fluke here, right? These women have talent oozing out of them. They also have they're so brave. So just getting to be in her presence anytime, I still feel that for her. And I try to teach young actresses to become producers, take charge of your life, do what she did. So when she, in that moment, said, when after everything she had gone through to help me get this made, and then they asked more of her, I, I'm saying I'm just so touched she was willing. And then in the end, it turned out beautiful. And again, how frustrating that to tell a story about slavery, we needed a white lead. We had magnificent African American and Black actors, but we needed a white lead. And of course, a woman had the guts to highlight it and let it be their story, but she had to get it made. So in my life, I find stories that I'm passionate about, and then I push and push and push, and I don't give up. And that's thanks to my father and mother and my sister and the bond of our family to not give up. So now I am actually still working. Much to my shock, I'm still doing this all the time now. But in addition, I teach. And I love the teaching part. I love it, love it, love it. It's fun, it's freeing. I was asked to work at universities. I don't fit. I've already done the corporate thing. So this way, I'm like a personal tutor. I just get to do it one-on-one. And I don't have any rules or paperwork or things that I have to comply with. So I can be honest and direct and say, hey, you heard that's okay. That's how it's done. You could do it a different way.
So, Susan, if someone's listening or watching you today and they're thinking, I have a story, but I could never do that. How could I ever? Here I am in Ohio,
Right.
I'm not in Hollywood. How can I do this thing? What would you say to that person? How,
Well,
how
first
would you?
I'd say go to at producer gal on TikTok or Susan Cooper producer gal on Instagram and watch all my TikToks because they're free. They're free. And I try to give all the information so that even if you never pay me and work with me, it's free. And I give it in like little bite-sized chunks to get you started. So then the people that do choose to work with me that have the wherewithal because they've had a successful life, or they're saying, hey, I want to do this so I can I'll talk to me once or twice, different from people who work with me monthly for years. Um, they've got at least a beginning. And I talk about in those TikToks other brilliant people. For example, Robert McKee, MCKEE, is a story genius. In the film industry, most people have taken his seminars years ago, and they were many thousands of dollars. Today, he offers a webinar, and the webinars are only hundreds of dollars, a couple hundred, and he teaches what is story, and he breaks it down. And then you can sort of find what genre does your story belong in? Are you overcoming adversity in that sort of one area? Could it have comedy in it as well? How do you? And so I always suggest to people he's a basic tool. And there are many writers also online that offer, how to write for television, how to write for novels. I find he's probably one of the greatest of all time. He's older now, and you want to grab that before he passes. And his book is quite technical. So don't be put off by the book if it seems like, he has charts and graphs of characters and it's a lot. But even if it goes into your subconscious, it starts to make the shift. I always say a writer's way. I would say the same about your marvelous books. Those of us who love too much often have a story because that's what's spinning in our mind. Sometimes you just need to get it out for you. It doesn't matter that you're going to monetize it. I'm very honest about how much money are you even going to make. So you may want to go down that road to make a movie, but I'll often talk to people about their own life first and say, for goodness sakes, get safe. Do not go, oh, I'm going to quit my job and write for a year. Never do that. Never do that. Never do that. That is not safe or wise. And the film industry is fluctuating all the time. That can be in your favor. There's YouTube and Instagram, lots of ways now. Look, I'm nobody, and now I'm talking to you. And my sister is huge on the internet. And when we were young, that didn't even exist. If I was a speaker, I'd have to travel the world. Now I get to be the comfort of my home. And I think the wisdom of older people, I have encouraged many people, take your story to the internet, take your story to social media. And then, because film doesn't tend to be an innovative source, it can be, but because it's so expensive for someone to risk millions of dollars, you sort of test your story and build a fan base. And we talk about how do you do that, whether it's a novel or a novella or online. So kind of all things story, because I find story is the most healing. And even this morning, I already made a mistake of, instead of explaining to somebody through story what they could do, so it wasn't as offensive. And hey, the world's been doing that since the Bible was created, right? All religions have stories and rituals. That is the best way, not for me to say, well, I already see. Because, what I was given, even as when I was 4 years old, is I was given even though I was like this little kid, these truths would fall into my head. Not a great thing to be speaking out when you're 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, when you see stuff, So I've learned, but I'm still, no, I have not learned. I am still learning. That's the freaky thing about being as old as I am and feeling every day just gobsmacked, smacked by how still foolish I can be.
Well, or maybe still so brave, still taking that chance and putting it out there. So what I think I'm hearing, Susan, is if someone has that urge to tell that story, get started. Do what
Yes,
you need to do. Take the first step.
do
Don't
it.
keep waiting for everything to line up, or
Yeah.
don't even keep waiting for the courage. Jump in and the courage will come. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love the book, The Artist's Way. I actually wish someone, not just one person, I wish 20 people would take the structure of The Artist's Way and redo it for their tribe, for their people, because it's such a brilliant, encouraging tool to write. Um, my partners and I put together a self-esteem program, and it's called Manadoob, and the nonprofit is preparekidsforlife.org. And it is a marvelous story that my partner and I crafted together, that my partner, June Salen, wrote. And we worked on it for years. And then another brilliant woman, Julia Molino, who's brilliant in the book world, said, put crafts to this. And then at the time, I was going through therapies for my sons. All of them had different kinds of therapies. And all of that, and all those doctors and therapists put that into the workbook. So this is $1 million of research, probably 10 million, into a marvelous program that I'm grateful to my partners is now taught, and it's a nonprofit. So we raise money from the Hilton Foundation, the Saban Foundation, the Walter, another foundation that is amazing. So they were able to keep this, and now Prepare Kids for Life and this Manadoo program is taught all over the world. And it's been translated into Hebrew. It's actually taught in Israel to Palestinian and Jewish kids, kids from all over the world. We're on military bases where kids really suffer a great deal, and adults and family members. So I'm a really big believer in story as a great place to begin with healing. And for kids, combined with crafts, it really works. So I've I put so many years and continue to be involved in Prepare Kids for Life. I'm so proud of that. I have a program that will even be there for my kids and grandkids. Just some very basic things about what you're saying. It opens kids up to start to write and talk. And
So I want to ask you, and I may be putting you on the spot here, Susan. I want to ask you if there are particular stories that come to mind, maybe just one, that demonstrates the power of this process of telling one's story as a tool for healing. Now, obviously, you make a movie, it's going to reach a lot of people, and a number of them are going to say, oh my gosh, me too. But just the very fact of telling one's own story, I don't even like to admit this, but so much of Women Who Love Too Much is my story. I did it so many ways. I mean, I had clients, of course, I had clients. I watched it happen in other people's lives, but there are a lot of ways you can do loving too much. And that was my story, basically. I remember being interviewed, and there was a therapist on the program with me, and she started talking about those women, which was very rude, in my opinion. And I said, I am one of those women. And probably she was too, because that's who become therapists, are women who
Right.
love too much. Sorry, but most of us come from a background where there was a lot of pain. And that's why we choose that particular profession. We're trying to heal ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah. So how about a story? Do you have a story that you keep it anonymous, but a
Oh,
story that can,
well, I think that's hard for me given I work in large scope, right? That's just me. I work so when you say profound, I think I've already shared Fanny Kimball, right? Here's a woman wrote her story and it happened to literally change the world. But what it did for her personally, in other words, it helped to end the Civil War. But what it did for Fanny personally was help her as a woman to speak out. So I guess I want to say that every day, any small story, whether it falls in the screen. So this is how I feel. I serve story. So story is this thing to me, and I serve it. No one knows where their story will end up. No one knows why they're on the planet. So all of us have a purpose. So if you tell your story, for example, my kids were interviewing me yesterday. They have this marvelous deck of cards. My middle son, Ari, and then my youngest son is Noah, joined in. Noah Tablib, who is a sound designer, that sound design guy, because tells his story in music. And they were asking me questions so that they'll have it for when I've passed for their kids and grandkids. So they wanted more story. So one way is turn your iPhone on and talk to your grandkids, talk to your kids, talk to anyone younger than you, and just start saying what's important to you. There are games that do this, there are books that you can buy that guide you through this, but that's the marvel of your phones, right? Everyone is a producer. Everyone has a camera. I think a lot of people don't tell their story because they don't think they're writers. You don't need to write. You pull out your iPhone and you talk, and computers today will transcribe if you want it written. If you start, I cried through this whole thing. Hilarious, like to me, like who should be camera trained. I laugh. My sister's marvelous. I am not. So I'm crying and talking. And I said to my kids, oh my gosh, they're going to think grandma was just weeping all the time. But, it was so touching to me and so personal. So I would say, whatever your story is, it's going, even if it only affects you, like it just helps you discover you. I didn't even know what I felt about things till they started asking me, right? And it comes out. So the questions may be where it begins. There's something marvelous called dabblewriter.com, DABBLEWRITER.com. It's a computer program that helps you write. And it asks you questions. It'll ask you about your characters. Where are they from? What are their character traits? And then it gives you a plot grid and it helps walk you through this. So you can turn it on yourself and you don't have to use that one. If you Google Dabble Writer and what competitive script programs or book writing programs are there, there's many now. And some are also free. So I encourage anyone to begin talking, and the easiest is try your iPhone. Again, I can't think of that many. I wish I had like a story for a one woman. I can only give you mine. And I don't think my story is embedded in the Manadu program. Um, I tend to use story therapeutically, I guess, for myself and others. So the essence is what's important to me, not the details. And then when I'm creating a story for motion picture, it has to have certain things. The jeopardy has to escalate. I'm an American producer. I love a happy ending. I need a down second act, which means your character is struggling and struggling and struggling, and then it gets worse. And then when you think it can't get better, or can't be okay, then it does become okay. So I think in terms of filmmaking, but anyone doesn't need to do that. Like just begin your story. And I would say, get it out of you. Write it. You can write it linearly. You can write it in any way that works for you. And then from it, you may take little portions. And then you'll go, oh, that period in my life, that was important. Because movies are usually just a portion of a life, right? They're only 90 minutes. They can't grab that, but they get the essence of a conflict and the essence of the resolve.
And of course, none of us know the ending of our story until the ending of our story, until we leave the body. So I guess, what do I want to say about that? That our story is always unfolding. I heard a young man speak the other night, and he was young. I mean, he was in his 30s, but he was able to see how, and he'd been through a lot, a tremendous amount of difficulty and just trials. And he was able to see how every piece of it was necessary and how it was all unfolding for his own growing awareness, growing humility, growing willing to be of service to other people rather than selfishly motivated. It was very powerful hearing him. And those changes that come about in our lives, we can't see them when they're happening sometimes. It's only in retrospect. That he had that kind of retrospect in his 30s was quite amazing to me,
Yeah.
because it took me a lot longer to have that. Although I have to say, by the time I was 40, I was beginning to be able to look back and say, okay, I had to go through those things in order to get here. So it doesn't matter whether it looks like a successful story. It's more about the struggles, the overcoming, the enduring. And when you were talking, Susan, I was thinking about how we have become so oriented toward a screen, whether it was a television screen, now the computer screen, the movie screen, screens. But when you were talking about talking into that iPhone to people who aren't here yet, whether those grandchildren exist or not yet, you're giving them the gift of your experience, your strength, your hope as a human being, your evolvement. And it made me think about how people used to sit around a fire. A tribe would sit around the fire and they would tell stories. That was the entertainment. I have a Hawaiian background, and when I was 40, I was in the islands, and there was a kind of a reunion of the family. And everybody got up and performed. Every single person. They sang, they danced, they said a poem. They had that old-fashioned idea of, we entertain ourselves. We don't look at something else and expect it to do it for us. And somehow, with all the technology involved in that iPhone, you're bringing that back. You're making that happen again. It's very intimate.
That's very beautiful. We actually did a documentary on Eddie Aikau, who is a Hawaiian, and it's called Hawaiian, the Legend of Eddie Aikau. He's known in the islands today. He was a surfer who was one of the greatest surfers of all time and a lifeguard. And then he attempted to save a boat he was on of people, which had turned over, and he lost his life. And those of us believe he's still paddling on. But what he stood for was aloha. As a surfer, when the Australians and the Americans invaded Hawaii, and they were literally hurting each other and killing each other, well, not killing, but I think there were some horrible incidences on the beach, he would stop it. He would say, that's not Hawaiian. So his story is so magnificent. But what was sweet that I learned in the documentary is one of the men said, to the world, he's Eddie Aikau and is a treasure. But to me, he was my brother, and I lost him. So that's the level that stories touch. So there's a story that you mean, like it's like the pebble in the pond. You may not think your story's that important, but it's very important to your kids, your grandkids, your community. And then you don't know what it will get picked up upon and then told to the world. Like, we don't know. I only really believe, like, my sister and I interviewed my mom and dad a lot. And yet we're constantly talking to each other. Hey, do you remember this? Do you know about us? Like, we're an immigrant family. Where did we come from? How did we get here? How that still affects the decisions we make. My dad was magnificent about believe in your dreams. He was super poor. His father couldn't read and write in English. He translated for them. They had a fruit cart by the side of the road in Gary, Indiana in the winter, and they made it. My dad made it to Montecito, California. Wow. And he it's a beautiful story of many immigrants, but I know it, so it breathes in me. Like, not makes me cry to think, but like, not to give up. Look, my grandparents were on the boat. They came, it was terrible where they left. It was hard when they got here. And then the American dream. All of them became educated. My dad and his four sisters, they became teachers, vice presidents at schools. My dad was in World War II as a pilot, and then he became an insurance broker with his own company. All of this were my grandma and grandpa, my husband's grandma and grandpa similarly. So wherever you're from, whatever you're about, knowing who you are now and knowing who you were, it's so essential. And, as I said, we're sad we didn't get even more information. So I encourage everyone, don't wait to be asked, begin to tell it. Your kids will be sorry that they don't know later, and then go back as far as you can remember. Because to find the answers today, it's so helpful to look to the wisdom and the wisdom that people have. And I guess you're right. Social media has become our fire pits, right? That's how and like, even though you and I don't get to sit in the same room today, I'm grateful because as an older person, I didn't have to get in the car or go on an airplane. And that's the magic of media.
I want to ask, I just love doing this with you, Susan. It's wonderful. I want to ask a couple of questions about being a person of age. What is the most challenging thing for you today as a person of age? What do you find something that
I guess
just,
the obvious is just that I'm in a body. So I could have ignored when I was young and like I would work through the night and all that. And you just can't. So that's marvelous because those boundaries really were always there. Now I have to be much more disciplined about health. Again, we've mentioned my sister, Julia Loggins. She's incredible about health. So I have to be more disciplined because she is. So one is I'm in this spaceship and I must take care of it. That has to become absolutely priority.
what about in the outer world? What's challenging that comes at you from out there?
So then we were saying navigating the outer world, and given computers and everything today, I am so much more dependent on my children and young people than my parents were. The jump from my parents to me wasn't that great. The jump from me to my children, the world is huge. How to communicate, you have to email, you have to work your iPhone. I have these giant glasses so that I can, stay, young, stay able to communicate in today's world. And always asking for help. I think the humility of that is magnificent, that our generation of older people need the young. In other generations, they could be like, well, you got to listen to me, and they'd be not wrong. And sometimes I feel like that. And as I've shared, I felt like that when I was 4. So I don't know what was up with that. But I must now ask for help all day long.
So that is an equalizer between us and our progeny. Yeah, we don't get to assume a position of superiority, which we used to be able to just because we were older. I'm older, I know better, but not in this area. They know better.
No.
You're so skilled, and we are the ones who are saying, how do you do that?
And
Help
sometimes I'll
me.
have to say to them, hey, just slow down. And I
Yeah.
remember thinking, when I would watch, say, as we get older, sometimes we literally slow down. Wow, again, it chokes me up to ask, to always be humbled, to always have to say. And I'm a physically strong person. And yet, every single day, it's like, wow, I hit the wall again.
Yeah. When I go to the grocery store now, they used to say, would you like help out with your groceries? And I'd say, oh, no, very arrogant. Now I say, yes, please. And could you open that bottle for me before I leave?
Right?
Because,
And
it's,
hey, can you check my iPhone? Do I have a message?
well, see, I don't carry one with me. I don't do
Okay.
that. But I will say, along that same line of asking for help, I just want to give a big shout out to my daughter because I couldn't be doing this without her. She is all the brains behind this. I just have the mouth. So, okay. Um, what are you looking forward to next, Susan? What's
I'm going to grab a Kleenex on that one. Um, I don't know. And isn't that great? You know, I was always a very certain person, hugely driven. When I was 24, 25 years old, I had 10 people working for me, whether I was paying them or not. I had interns and I've been always fighting to build. And now I'm at, I don't know, it's kind of marvelous and full of wonder. I'm working on a film right now. I'm talking to clients that are incredibly illuminating for me about their projects and their stories. I can't even tell you that I have an idea of where that will go. My kids have a sense of a world where it will go. I used to have so much certainty. I have none.
But it doesn't sound like that's bothering you. It sounds like
No, I feel like a child
exciting
again.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the
yeah.
wonder, and I'm excited. Like this,
Anything's
I'm
possible.
definitely not done. And as I've worked with people older, their 90s, the one thing that really hits me is like, gosh darn it, you're never done. You're never done. Even as you're walking to heaven, you're like still figuring it out and still relationshiping, still frustrated, still feeling those things, still learning. So I thought I'd hit a time. I remember thinking, oh, when I'm 60, I'll understand. When I'm 70, I'll understand. When I'm 80, I'll have it wired. I guess that's life. You just keep going, wow, okay then.
Yeah. The constant discovery. That is so exciting. So very, it's such a wonderful feeling when we're little and we're figuring out how to do this and how to do that. But as we're older and we bring those tools that we've gathered from all this long experience and we get to apply them, sometimes just to enduring, sometimes to telling our story, sometimes to finding a whole new way of expressing ourselves, which Susan, I thank you for communicating to our listeners and our viewers, just that it's like, once upon a time I was a song leader. We had pom poms. I feel like you've got these pom poms out and saying, you go, you can do it, and cheering people on. And we can do that for one another. That was one of my purposes in having this podcast, is that we relate to one another, we encourage one another, we validate one another, we inspire one another. So, any last words for anyone of age? Any last message today?
Take care of your health. It's okay to have boundaries. If other people are asking you to do things and you're tired or you're done, say the no word. I think I'm just learning the no word, thanks to your books, right? And now boundaries, which is something I really try and help others when they're young. But as you get older, I think we need them too, to say, wow, I'm full for today.
I love that. And my experience, both in my own life and watching people, is when we're able to say, no, I can't do that, or I don't want to do that, that's not right for me. We don't really make people angry. They respect us more because we've taken the burden off of them for trying to figure out how to take care of us. Oh gosh, does she really want to do this? Maybe I shouldn't ask. They know we're going to say yes or no, and it's going to be genuine. So it's a big, big, big relief. Susan, I cannot thank you enough for being here today.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. It's such a joy. And I've learned just from your talking to me. Thank you for that.
Well, that's very mutual. I hope all of you have learned and enjoyed this day with Susan Cooper. Goodbye for now.
Bye.
Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, is sponsored by Sensationally Silver, a complete hair care product line created especially for people with hair like ours, naturally gray and white hair. Sensationally Silver products can be found exclusively at sensationallysilver.com.
Sensationally silver, because you are.